and 恭喜發財 新年快樂 and happy Chinese New Year. My name is Aaron and I have this incredible privilege to be able to speak to all of you today. I'm going to be talking about something that I have a question before I ask that. Who can say that they've mastered love and money? I have this incredible privilege to be able to preach about something called love and money today. Every Chinese New Year, I love going and seeing my family, going back to the relatives, and we have this thing called Chinese red pockets that we love to give out to everybody, and it's incredible. It's an incredible time of family. It's like basically celebrating Christmas, except Chinese style. Okay, instead of having Santa Claus, you have red lion dancing. Instead of a Christmas tree, you have lanterns. Instead of fireworks, you have firecrackers. And so instead of presents, we have red pockets. So, if those that are here today are trying to celebrate Chinese New Year with us, we thank you so much for coming. And if you always wanted to just connect, then you can always connect like that. But love and money. I think about love and money, how it's a universal language, just like maths. Okay, so everybody knows what a Rubik's Cube is, right? So when I think about a Rubik's Cube, it seems quite difficult to actually figure out, right? Who knows how to do a Rubik's Cube in here? Put your hand up. Not me. But only a few of us. And it's just like love and money as well, Once you figure out the formula, it just takes a lot and a lot and a lot of practice. Yeah. In the same way, when you figure out the formula about how to give love, how to even receive love as well. Receiving love takes practice. And also making money as well as being generous. It just takes a lot of practice and practice and practice to get mastered at it. Now, I can't say that I'm a man that has mastered love and money, but I believe that there is someone in the room that has mastered love and money. And his name is Jesus Christ. His name is God our Father, okay? And where we can learn that from is just straight through the Bible today. And so we've got normally, traditionally, we like to send out the sermon notes to everybody. So the church has the sermon notes. So if you want to follow along, just nudge the person right next to you. They may have the notes. But if you wanted to grab it afterwards, then you can absolutely do that. But I have another question for everyone today. If you can only choose one, love or money, which one would you choose? Okay, some say money, some may say love. Well, in Proverbs chapter 19, verse 22, the Bible says, what a person desires is unfailing love. Better to be poor than a liar. So I'm sorry, whoever said, they prefer money, unfortunately, you're a liar. But the question is, how much money do you need? How much money do we want? How much money do we need? That is the question. Yeah. It's not about making money as well. It's all about finding enjoyment on how to use our money, right? Why is that the case? Well, in Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 2, the Bible says, God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor, so that they lack nothing their hearts desire. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them, and strangers enjoy them instead. You see this in the world today. Someone makes lots and lots and lots of money. By the time they turn 70 years old, you ask them, what was it all worth it? Spending all that time in your business and not spending time with your family. And they always say no. Or take a person that is on their deathbed and you ask them, what's your deepest regret in life? And they'll always say, I wish I spent more time with my family. I wish I spent more time in my relationships. You see that all over the world today. That people just plow and plow and plow their lives into businesses, into careers, into jobs, and they fail to recognize that the most important person right there in their life is not only their family, not only their kids, but also a relationship with God. And they always leave their relationship with God at the very last moment. Some may say even, how about I'd rather be rich and miserable than poor and still be miserable. Well, Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 9 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken.
Come on.
So, what about those who say, I prefer, love? Money, I don't care about money. I hate money. I don't want to go after it. What about that? Well, if you don't have money, who's going to love you? Bible says not to have too much or else we forget about God, yet not too little, which would make you want to rob people. Proverbs chapter 30 verse 8 to 9 says, give me neither poverty nor riches, but give me only my daily bread. Otherwise I may have too much and disown you and say, who is the Lord? Or I may become poor and steal and so dishonor the name of my God. The Christian life is all about having just enough. Yeah. Just enough for yourself, just enough to be able to be generous to other people as well, and so that you don't have an abundance of possession. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. It consists about relationships and how you keep them. Let me ask you another question. If you die today, how will people remember you? Who will they remember you as?
Come on, Aaron.
As an inspiring person, as a man of motivation, as a woman of great servitude, or someone who was incredibly generous? How will people remember you today? The truth is, we want both. We want both love and money. Enough money to pay for everything. Groceries, subscriptions, Netflix, whatever floats your boat. Enough money for us to have what we want. Enough money to just make us a little bit joyful and happy. Like going down to get some dessert. Having the flexibility, having the freedom to be able to go and spend whatever you want, right? Love in the form of someone caring for us, showing compassion, helping us, encouraging us, listening to our rants, going above and beyond for us, doing things for us, serving us as well. It's unfailing love that we all desire. Something that man just simply cannot do. Man simply does not have unfailing love. But God has unfailing love. God has unfailing love. And He has the ability to give you enjoyment with all your wealth. Isn't that what we all want? It's a gift from God. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 19. Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God. Love in the world is like bubbles. I love playing bubbles with my kid. We have Kids Kingdom today, which is great. And, normally we'd have kids running around and, it's an enjoyment. And sometimes we'll have bubbles that we blow. And when I think about love in the world, they're like bubbles. Superficial. You look at them, they look great. They're beautiful. They sparkle in the sun. But when you touch them, they pop. They don't last very long, do they? I think about how in our relationships, in our youth, our love is like bubbles. It's so superficial. It's based on what you look like. It's based on how much money you have. But when you are in old age, when you lose all your looks and you've got no more money left, who's going to love you? I think about how love in the world is like fish kind of love. What do I mean by that? Well, forgive me, as I've been here for about 2 months and I still haven't tasted an amazing meal of fish and chips here. Forgive me. You go to the restaurants, you go to the fisherman, and you say, hey, do you love fish? Do you love fish, Mr. Fisherman? And they say, I love fish. Well, what have you done for fish? You just go out there and you catch fish and you sell them at the market. What have you done for fish? You just like to eat fish. You don't love fish. It's the same thing in the world today. It's selfish. It's all about me. I think about Chinese New Year and the Chinese mindset of what love is. And so, obviously, I grew up as an Australian-born Chinese, and we love to go up to our relatives in our youth. I can't do it now because I'm married, but I love to go up. I still actually do it because it's something that your family really loves. But you go up to them and you say, "Happy New Year. Hope you get rich. Hope you make lots of money. Hope you have long life." We say all these nice things, and the more and more and more of these Chinese phrases that you can say, the more they feel like, oh, I want to give you red pockets. It's kind of like a business transaction. You say it once for Chinese New Year, and then you don't say any other time for a whole entire year before you come back for Chinese New Year with your relatives, and then you say it again just to get red pockets. It's a business transaction. Your relatives, they're like, man, I love these youths, saying all these things. I'm happy to give you it, but only to get it once a year. It's a business it's transactional. Love is like transactions in the world today. It's not actually about having many people love you. Right. It's about how many people can you love. Luke chapter 6 verse 32 says, "If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them." It's all about loving people no matter how they treat you. It's the way of the disciple. It's the way of selflessness of Christ. I think about why people become Christians. It's because they feel more loved in the church than out there in the world. I've got a lot of friends in Sydney that come from a Chinese background, and I used to study at this university, and tons and tons of Chinese students come from China to study in their international in an international university. And what happens is they basically are shipped away from their families to just study and study and study. Some students actually don't arrive for university. They arrive many, many years beforehand. Some arrive when they're like 15, 16 years old, and they basically get them a house in Australia somewhere or anywhere around the world. And they basically just say, live there by yourself, figure it out yourself. At an age of 15 years old, 16, they don't know anybody, and they have no friends. All they're expected to do is just study till their brains just go crazy. And then a Christian comes along and says, hey, I'd like to invite you over to my house. I want to cook you a great meal. I understand how hard it is to be an international student and figure it out yourself and figure it out in a different language that you've never spoken before. I understand how hard it is. Come over, let me help you. And a Christian comes in, brings them over to the home, studies the Bible with them, and they become a Christian. Why? Because no one's there to love them. Now, I think about why I became a Christian as well. It was about 6 years ago. I decided to study the Bible, and I saw that there was the brotherhood, the camaraderie in the church, and how everybody lived this incredible and had this incredible sense of purpose in their life. They loved one another in the Christian home. They would pray before they eat, and the unity in which the brotherhood had was nothing that I've ever seen before. Why are you the way that you are? You are who you are because who you spend your time with and the decisions you make and don't make despite your circumstances. I've got 2 simple points for you guys today. It's, why don't you love God? No, just from a point of view of like, why don't you love God? I want to understand. Give it a try. See how it works. Luke chapter 7 verse 36 says, When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. So she stood behind him at his feet weeping. She began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner." Jesus answered him, "Simon, I have something to tell you." "Tell me, teacher," he said. Two people owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave the debts of both. Now which of them will love him more? Simon replied, "I suppose the one who had bigger debt forgiven." "You have judged correctly," Jesus said. Then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, "Do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. She did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little." Love is in proportion to how much forgiveness you are given.
Right.
This is what the Bible says. This woman showed great love towards Jesus because of the great forgiveness she was given by God. If you think about it in a logical sense, when you're growing up and you upset your dad, and your dad's like very angry, you are not happy. I mean, not that you're not happy because of your dad, but you're not happy, you're feeling ashamed, and you're desperate to please and win the favor of your dad once again. Imagine if the whole world had dads that basically lived a life of anger and always rebuked, reprimanded their children, and basically their children just lived their whole entire life trying to do things that would please their dad and get their attention. How would that what kind of world would that create? Where people would just be desperate for their parents to what we call it is daddy issues. This world has too many daddy issues. And it's because their dads simply just did not have a forgiveness kind of attitude towards their kids. Just like God has a forgiveness kind of attitude towards us. People don't love because they fail to see a debt being owed. People also don't love because of a failure to receive forgiveness by the offended party. As a result of a lack of forgiveness, you don't feel encouraged to forgive other people when they hurt you. And so as a result of that, you keep all this bitterness inside you and you don't want to talk about it to anybody else. Because you're still trying to figure out and deal with these issues deep down in your heart because of how your parents have treated you. How do I know this? This is me. This is me. I still feel like I have to learn how to forgive my dad for how he has treated my mother. My dad is an incredibly serving dad. His dad died when he was 12 years old during the Great Leap Forward after the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Imagine how difficult that would have been living in the Canton region, South China, and having the Communist Party come in and take everything away from your family. Possession, wealth, just like what's happened to Ukraine. And how people have fled, their mortgages don't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. Their life isn't important anymore. To take his life. And so he grew up with 3 younger brothers and my grandmother, and figure it out himself. He came out of education. He was 12 years old at that time, and he had to figure it out. He had to come over. By God's grace, he went over to Sydney. He migrated. He met my mum, and he started his own family. But still, he had to figure it out himself. He figured out that love is an endless kind of servitude. Shut your mouth, just serve. Forget about your feelings. This is the kind of love that has taught me. And as a result, I suppress my feelings. I keep all my feelings deep down, and when the moment of pressure comes, I crack. And so, I explode. I get angry. It goes on to my wife. She gets hurt bitterly. She now has to find a way to forgive me. And I'm still trying to figure out my emotions, so I can't even go out and humble myself before her and say, I'm sorry for how I've made you feel. Cycle. Yeah. Circle. The problem of the Chinese. Why? How do I know that? It's because my friends are like that. My ABC friends, Australian-born Chinese friends are like that. Australian-born Kiwis are like that. If you're a Westerner, it doesn't matter if you're a Westerner, even if you're from China living anywhere in the world, if you're Chinese living anywhere, that's your problem. I know that why? Because I've gone through it and I know it in the scriptures. Forgiveness is the key. Take marriages, for example. Why don't marriages in the world last long? They don't last long because both spouses fail to forgive one another. Yeah. Or they fail to work it out. What happens to marriages when they go to the distance? For better or for worse? A world of betterment is created. Christian marriages that are successful are a hope to the world. Why? Because they have something called the Bible, a relationship with God, and a thing called forgiveness. Christian marriages, unfortunately, are not something that we see today. Unfortunately, China is amongst the top 10 countries with the highest rates of divorces since 2018. Top 10, 3.2 divorces per 1,000 people, according to the most recent data. You can see my link in not the description below, but watching too much YouTube, but in the sermons that we've sent out. Take working, for example, as well. Factors including employee resignation include feeling underpaid, which is a sense of feeling undervalued by your boss. Why? Because your boss tells you to do something, you mess up, and now you're trying to make it up to your boss, but he's still angry at you for making the mistake earlier before. And so people feel undervalued, they feel like they're not believed in by their boss, and as a result, they want to resign. How do I know this? I've got friends like that. Ask yourself these questions. How much of who you are is down to the love and support from another person? How much of that love and support comes from God? So much of where we live today is out of our control. Believe me, you're not in control of your visas. Someone behind the desk is. And even they are under the subject of rules and regulations according to the immigration department. Loving God comes from a sincere gratitude towards His forgiveness. And when we feel forgiven by God, we can feel like we can forgive other people. And this comes down to prayer. This comes down to prayer. We have this all-night prayer starting next Sunday. I want to invite you guys to come and join. In the past, we've had Chinese friends that have come and we're feeling like, wow, do they even know anything about Jesus? Prayer? Do they even know anything about prayer? But they come, they love it, they start praying, and they're like, at the end of the all-night prayer, they're like, I feel God. Yeah. And they become a Christian. If you're here today and you don't know anything about the Bible, you're like, who's Jesus? Come and initiate with me. Come and initiate with a member of the church that has brought you out and study the Bible. Try loving God. It still amazes me after 6 years how prayer works. Yeah. It still amazes me. It shouldn't, but it still does. But it just shows us how unfaithful we are. And it still amazes me how deep and insightful the Bible is after reading it for 6 years. There's always something to learn. You don't know everything about the Bible, nor do I. But we're here in it together to learn together. That's my first point for everybody. Try loving God. That's my challenge. But if not, why don't you want to love God? My second point is, why don't you want to give money to God? Controversial. Ooh. But why don't you? Ecclesiastes chapter 2 verse 26. Read this with me. It says, to the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. So giving money to God is something that we can please God in. Giving money to God is like putting money in a piggy bank. I remember a time when my mum used to save money for me. And I would give her about $400 every fortnight or so. And she would just save it up in an account where later on she'd be like, okay, you want to go on a holiday? I've got money for you. Go on a holiday. This is your money that I've helped you save. Why? Because you're terrible with money, Aaron. I used to be so horrible with money. I used to spend like this, spend like this, spend like this, spend like this. Savings, what is savings? But this is what it's like to give contribution. This is what it's like to give money to God. God is saving it up for a better life for you. And, God doesn't care about, your money. Does he need your money? He technically doesn't need your money. He's like, you know what? I know exactly where all the New Zealand dollars are, Australian dollars are, US dollars, Chinese yuan. I know exactly where every single cent is in the whole entire universe. Why should I care about how much you're giving me? All I care about is your heart. How much heart do you have towards me? I appreciate Nixon's contribution talk about how it's about how you feel towards that person. Why don't you feel great to give money to God? I'm asking that question from I'd like to understand. I'd like to help. I know exactly how I've seen this in action. So this morning I calculated how much money I saved from not smoking now and not doing drugs. So a packet of cigarettes used to be $25. I think it went up to about $33. And I think you can get packets of cigarettes in Sydney for like $50 depending on the quality, right? It's horrendous. It's a good thing actually. It's not horrendous. It's a great thing. But I calculated it and I came to a total of about a minimum $20,000 for the past 6 years. Now that's not that much. That's not a lot of money at all. Why? Because I only used to smoke a packet about, 2 packets about a week. Most people smoke 1 packet a day. That's how much people do smoke. I can't imagine if somebody has given up smoking to become a Christian, how much money they would save because God making them quit. $20,000. I also think about how many medical bills I would have saved in the future. Medical bills are incredibly expensive. And how many medical bills as well for my children I would have saved when they start following in my footsteps as a full-time smoker. In addition, all the money that I would have spent on buying drugs. In Sydney, a bag of cocaine is about $250. And that usually basically lasts you for a night. And I calculated that, and a minimum that I've found that I would have saved for the past 6 years of being a Christian is $35,000. Again, not that much compared to how much I used to do. How many people in the world actually do cocaine every single day, every single week? I can't imagine the bills. $35,000. And I think about how much I've been blessed by God because of giving up these things. Finding a good wife, having a family. This is what it's like to be a Christian, and also the knowledge of acquiring wealth. Again, I used to be terrible with money, but through the church teaching me the Bible, teaching me how to acquire more wealth for the sake of giving to God and giving to other people, I was willing to turn down a job at Tesla. I would have worked at Tesla in Sydney at the flagship office, and I was like, you know what? I don't need this job, even though I was looking for one. I didn't have to take it. Why? Because I knew that God was going to take care of all of my needs. I knew that God was going to catch me when I needed to. Why didn't I take the job at Tesla? Well, it's because it didn't fit into my Christian life. I couldn't do it with my Christian life. I just simply couldn't. happiness and my family's happiness as well. I was able to have a conversation with my mum the other day. And compared to the conversation that I would have had 6 years ago, it is light and darkness. I used to be angry, impatient, selfish, arrogant. And the list goes on. And but I was calling my dad. I was trying to figure out how he was doing because he's got this issue with his face and he's quite hurt. And my mum takes the phone away from my dad and is like, "Hey son, it's so good to talk to you. Let me talk to you in my private space." And I was like, I wanted to talk to dad, but okay, I'll talk to you, mum. But that's what it's like. So why don't you want to give money to God and see what happens? In Psalms 34 verse 8 it says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the one who takes refuge in him." So where does the money go? Well, you can see it all over you. See it all over here with the church, but you can also see it online with our GNN Good News Network videos, which comes out every single month. And it also goes towards our benevolent organization, which is called Mercy Worldwide. And these organizations take care of those that are in Ukraine. They take care of people that are in the orphanages in Cambodia. They take care of the poor all around the world with poor projects. It goes towards the ministry staff here that are wisely going to allocate it proportionally to where it should go and it needs to go. I'm so grateful for our leadership, Scotty and Jenna here. I believe that they have the godly wisdom to not show partiality with how they use their money. How they use the church's money to make sure that it goes to exactly the right places where it needs to be. And Proverbs chapter 29 verse 2 says, "When the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan." You can talk to Christians here today. How do people use their money here? Are you happy with the people are you happy with how the church uses its money? This is how you can actually test the scripture to see whether or not the church is using the money financially wisely and whether or not it's going to the right places. I'm so grateful for them. The church is incredibly transparent. It's incredibly transparent. Every year we have what we call a financial presentation, where we basically show everyone in the church where the money goes. And this happens every year. I'm so proud of the fact that it's so open and transparent, so that everybody knows where exactly each cent goes towards. This is what it's so. In Proverbs chapter 29 verse 14, "If a king judges the poor with fairness, his throne will be established forever." You can see by whether or not this church is growing. Study the churches out. Study whether or not they've grown in the past year. And you'll see exactly whether or not God has blessed them to grow. A church that is not growing is not righteous, is not doing what is right. And you can actually study this church out, where it's come from, where it's going, how much it's grown this year, and you'll be able to see whether or not you feel confident to give. But in conclusion, guys, love and money. I have a story for everybody just to finish off. It's a story about instead of a box full of kisses, it's the red pocket full of kisses. All right, in celebrating Chinese New Year. And I can see Stephen really liking this. But some time ago, a man punished his 3-year-old daughter for wasting a roll of precious gold red pockets. Money was tight, and he became infuriated when the child tried to decorate the red pocket to put under the lantern. Nevertheless, the little girl brought the gift to her father the next morning and said, "This is for you, Daddy." The man became embarrassed by his overreaction earlier, but his rage continued when he saw that the red pocket was empty. He yelled at her, "Don't you know when you give someone a present, there is supposed to be something inside?" The little girl looked at him with tears in her eyes and cried, "Oh, Daddy, it's not empty at all. I blew kisses into the red pocket. They're all for you, Daddy." The father was crushed. He put his arms around his little girl and he begged for her forgiveness. Only a short time later, an accident took the life of the child. Her father kept the gold red pocket by his bed for many years, and whenever he was discouraged, he would take out an imaginary kiss and remember the love of the child who had put it there. Love is the most precious gift in the world, and we need money too. Guys, welcome to the Chinese New Year church service of the Auckland International Christian Church. We love you, and to God be all the glory. Amen.